What does language learning have to do with rivers, lightning, and a windshield breaking? Well, whenever those things happen, it creates a fractal shape, which I'm going to show you in a second. And apparently, according to science, the reason that a fractal shape happens is because it's the most efficient way for energy to disperse through space. Apparently, even buffalo or animals, when they disperse, they also disperse in a fractal shape. So, what is a fractal shape? A fractal shape is when three, we'll say, or more, but try to say three lines come out, and then each of those three become three, and then each of those become three, and so on, right? So you could zoom, if we kept doing that, you could zoom in no matter how far it gets, and you'd always find the original shape. That's called self similarity. And if you think about it, there is so much self similarity happening everywhere. Trees, which are a fractal shape, I mean, this looks like a tree. Trees are self-similar because if you look at the leaf of the tree, you're gonna, or a single branch, you'll see that that branch looks like the whole tree. So like a tree that's generally like a pine shape has pine needles. Trees that are round have round needles. It's another example of nature expressing itself in that fractal shape. And you'll also find that it's energy being released. The human body does that too. I mean, the human body, the veins are fractal. Streets are a fractal. You take that main highway, and then you get off on those little streets, and those little streets have little streets, and those little streets have little streets. So you find self similarity everywhere, even in man-made things, which tend to be square. You find that there's square self similarity everywhere. Square, more or less, houses have square windows, square rooms, square whiteboards, square computers, square videos on a square screen. So humans just use the same fractal thing without trying to, and usually in the square form, while nature does it in one of these forms. And so lightning does that across the sky. If you crack a windshield, it releases energy across the broken glass. In that way, it's just energy being released. So language is like this because if I have a thought in my mind that I want to express, that's the thought, and I need what's called a verb starting point to express the thought. If I use vocabulary without a verb starting point, it sounds like this: tomorrow, by the lake, in the park, at 2 p.m. Like if I just said that vocabulary, adverbs, nouns, you'd say, what? Oh, I'm going to see you tomorrow. We're meeting tomorrow. We're having a picnic. It needs a verb starting point to hold it all together, okay? So you ask me a question like, what's going on? What's the plans tomorrow? Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Oh, what'd you do last week? Oh, I did this. Tell me about your last trip. Oh, I went here. I did this. I did that. This happened. That happened. The verb starting point holds together the vocabulary branches. So in what way is that like nature? Where energy is being dispersed, because the thought is in my head, but I don't want the thought to be in my head. I want you to understand my thought. This is me. This is happening right now as we speak. I'm having this thought that I'm trying to tell you, which is how language is like a fractal. And as I do that, I'm finding ways for that thought to come out. And if you notice, every time I express a thought, I need a verb starting point in vocabulary. So I think the thought, that's a verb. I say the thought, I explain this, I express that. It's the same exact thing that's happening. So often when we approach language learning, we think that what we're supposed to be doing is putting rocks in our head, and those rocks are the language. We think it's every time I learn a new word, it's like, oh, gotta get the rock in my, gotta put something in my head. But we're not running around putting eggs in a basket. That's not what language learning is, but rather we are trying to create the fractal pattern in our mind that allows us to express thoughts. So that's visualizable on paper, and it's trainable, it's practicable, it's very simple. I ask you a question, that puts a thought into your head. You need to find the verb and vocabulary for the thought to come out. The tricky thing is, and also a very interesting thing, is, and this is where people can get caught up on this, it's that the only way to create the river system, right? Pretend the language for me is this river system where I can express thoughts can flow. That's what it means to be fluent, is that your thoughts can flow out easily. There's no way to build the river system without having the actual energy of the thought creating the river system. It's like imagine a lake on a hill, and the lake fills up with rain, so it's going to flow over and it's going to end up creating like a river system over some plain or something like that. Is the riverbed there and then the water goes through it? No, nothing's there. It's the water, it's the pressure of the flow of the water itself that creates the riverbed. So if you want to create that riverbed system of language which allows you to express thoughts, the only way to create it is by expressing the thought. You don't build a river, you just observe as the pressure of the water and the gravity creates the river. As that energy, as that pressure seeks expression, it naturally makes a fractal shape, which is where you get conversation trees, verb and vocabulary.